Hi everyone, it's me, Arielle, and it's Wednesday Warriors. And today I'm going to be addressing the topic I'm doing well in recovery, but now I feel more pressure when I slip up. I feel like I'm letting myself and others down when I struggle. How do you deal with the pressure to continue to do well and not let your success so far turn into a problem in the future? For example, perfectionism in recovery. So, I have a few thoughts on that, as I usually do. So, first, you have to look at the positives of this topic, this situation that someone wrote in about. And that is you're holding yourself accountable. It's a very, very great thing because if this is your current dilemma, it's working. You're successfully holding yourself accountable for your actions, for your recovery, for what you're doing. And then there is the other side of this topic, and that's you're being too hard on yourself if this is your dilemma. Because recovery is a process, and worrying about others too much is always going to hinder any kind of progress that you are trying to make. So you have to ask yourself the question, are you doing this for you or are you doing this for them? And I know a lot of people who are in recovery from an eating disorder are doing recovery for other people. They're doing it for their child, they're doing it for their parents, they're doing it for their significant other. And I understand that to a certain extent because if you care about someone, you always want to put your best foot forward. But first and foremost, you have to be in recovery for yourself. If you're not in it for you, you're not going to succeed. Any kind of progress you make is only going to be temporary. So you have to come to terms with that, first of all. And then there's this whole question in the topic about perfectionism in recovery and what happens if you let your success in recovery turn into a monster and it becomes a problem in the future. Well, perfectionism has no place in recovery, and you're going to learn this as you continue your journey in recovery. Perfectionism cannot coexist with recovery, it just doesn't work that way. So you have to omit that from your thinking right now. Recovery from something is a human transition. There can't be anything perfect about it. It can be healthier, it can be better, but it can't be perfect and it won't ever be. And this topic is talking about your success in recovery and letting your success so far turn into a problem in the future. Success is about pride in your efforts, and it's about pride in yourself. And success is not perfect, and it never will be. The sooner you learn to accept this, the better off you're going to be. The other thing is that being honest with yourself is key, or recovery cannot progress. If you don't allow for honesty, if you're not willing to be honest with yourself, you are going to start being fake, whether you realize it or not. You might pretend that you're better or okay when really you're not, because you're afraid of letting people down, because you're afraid of failing, because you think you know where you should be in recovery, so you try to project that in your actions and your demeanor. But it might not be what you're really feeling inside. And if you try to act like you're better than you really are, than you're really feeling inside, it's going to create problems for you. It doesn't really help you. And I know that I've talked before about, fake it till you make it. And there is a lot of good to that statement, but you can't fake the entire thing. You can't fake it so much that it becomes your reality, because it would be a false reality. Knowing when to get help, even when you're doing mostly well, is a sign of intelligence and progress. So if you've been doing well in recovery and things are pretty good, and you have a slip up or you start to struggle a little bit, and you don't want to let people down and you don't want to let yourself down, the best thing that you can do is be proactive about it and get help, or go back to what you were doing before when you first started recovery. Even if you have been doing well for years and all of a sudden you're starting to struggle, just because you, for example, go back to a therapist and you haven't done that for a year, you haven't done that for 2 years, it doesn't mean that you are failing in some respect. You're actually really helping yourself, and it's a real sign of intelligence to know when you need help and get it. So many people think that if they've been in recovery for a while, they can't go back to doing the things that helped them when they first started out because it is a sign of regression instead of progression. And that can't be farther from the truth. And I'll just tell you a personal story so that you believe what I am saying. Um, a couple of years ago, I was sort of having a hard time with things related to wanting to have a baby. And it was depressing me and it was really on my mind a lot. And even though I was fine and well and healthy, it was really taking a toll on me. And because I had the whole history of an eating disorder, and because I lead a support group, and because I do things in the eating disorder community, I wanted to stay proactive. And I thought to myself, what is it saying? What kind of message is it giving the women in my support group that I lead if I go back to a therapist? And, I sort of asked myself that question, and it doesn't really make me a weak person or less of a role model if I do such a thing. It just means that I am woman enough to know when I need the encouragement and when I need a little bit of support myself. Because if you think that because you're doing well, it means that you're always going to do well for the rest of your life, and you should be this perfect human being that gives help to others, but you don't really ever take the time to help yourself, you don't have the right attitude. So basically just realized within myself that taking a step like going to see someone would keep me on the right path, and it would make me feel better in my own personal life, and therefore I would be a better group leader and I would be a better person. So I went to see a therapist, and I hadn't been to see a therapist for a while, and it wasn't really eating disorder related for me. It was just because I knew that I had had an eating disorder in the past. I wanted to make sure that nothing sort of took root within me and made me start thinking in less of a healthy way. So I went to see someone and I talked to her, and really almost all we talked about was, my issues with wanting to have a baby and not having one, and things like that. And it helped me a lot. And I don't go anymore, and I haven't gone for a while, but I I knew that it was the right thing for me to do. And it didn't mean that I was weak, and it didn't mean that I had failed, because after all this time being recovered, I had to go back and see someone. It just means that I'm able to recognize when I need help and I act on it now. So you really have to sort of change your perception if you're talking about struggling and feeling like you're going to let yourself down and other people down. What really is letting yourself and other people down? Is it projecting this fake attitude of being well while you're struggling inside, and in the long run really hindering your recovery? Or is it remembering that you've gotten this far and then maybe going back and doing what you need to do to keep moving forward? You can't think of recovery as this perfect process, because it's not perfect. Feeling that pressure when you slip up is good in a way, because it shows that you really have gotten farther. It shows that you really want to be better and do better than you are doing. But you don't want to let that pressure dictate how honest you are with yourself. And you don't want it to keep you from getting help if it really comes to that. The other thing you really have to remember is one person's recovery is going to be completely different from another person's recovery. Recovery is something different for everyone. It takes a completely different amount of time for everyone. It entails different things for everyone. So you can't compare your recovery to someone else's recovery either. You can't compare your recovery to my recovery, or your recovery to someone that you read about in a magazine, or your recovery to your best friend's recovery, or your therapist's recovery, or the kind of recovery that you hear about on this channel. You have to remember that it's unique to you, and your journey is going to be your own and no one else's. And just remember that you can do this. And as long as you know that you can do this, really know it in your heart, you'll be able to do it. And don't let a slip up stop you in your tracks. I hope you have a great week, everyone, and I'll see you next time. Bye.